but I don't know what it's supposed to look like.
So, in general, let me, it's all compensated. Fairly well.
So you check by looking at the normal samples?
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to find something that doesn't really compensate correctly. Okay, so something, this is okay, but not great. So if you were to look at the samples, things that go off at 45-degree angles are generally bad. Okay? So whenever you look at, if a sample is correctly compensated, you'll get multiple different samples that are round, and irrespective of where it sits in this graph. This is not the best, but you may see it when you look at something else. If you see things that go in curves, if they go off at angles like this, it is generally not entirely correctly compensated. So in this case, you see things being pulled off here, and they're pulling off at an angle, and they're hitting the y-axis. If you saw that, you'd probably want to go back and check your
So how do you make it better? Because mine kind of does that. So then how do I compensate it correctly?
So
what is the goal of compensation?
the goal of compensation is that so you're not actually, so if you were to put in, like in the case of this example, if you were going to put in a positive or negative population, you said, okay, well I'm going to put the positive and negative cutoff here. So then anything that's over this side is negative. But is it really negative, or is it just poorly compensated so that the data got dragged over into the negative portion of it? If you compensated it correctly, maybe it would all kind of straighten up here, and then you wouldn't have as much negative population of cells there. So that's what you're doing with the compensation. Now the compensation, as they talked about in terms of the spectral overlap, there are certain combinations of dyes which always get, you have to compensate very carefully because there is the overlap. And then there's certain dyes which don't actually overlap, and therefore with compensation you typically don't really have to compensate them. For example, FTSE and APC don't have very much of an overlap between them, so rarely do you actually have to compensate between those two different dyes. But something that's very close, particularly a lot of the tandem conjugated dyes, you do actually have to compensate them. So a lot of it also depends upon the pairing and the dye combinations that you're looking at. What we try and do is make sure that if you have two markers that you're trying to discriminate, so in terms of like those looking at pairs of markers, try not to put them in two dye combinations that you would actually have a hard time compensating. Yeah.
Right.
Oh.
Maybe a stupid question, but
What's your answers?
by compensating, do you mean that you're eliminating the overlap?
Right. Yes. So
So this is bad.
again, the cartoon way of thinking of the compensation is that if you have,
Is this the first step?
if this is the wavelength and then this is the intensity of it, you have any color gives you a shape like this.
So I get it.
When you detect it, you will detect it at a particular wavelength and a particular range. That's what the filter is doing. What happens though is that say you have a different filter over here, you will still detect this color on a different filter. What the compensation is doing is okay, we're going to eliminate that so that on this filter set we're not actually detecting anything. But this is also a reflection. The compensation is not just a simple reflection upon the wavelength of it, but it's also the intensity. So if you turned it up really bright and you had something that looks like that, you would have to turn the compensation way up as well, so that you would eliminate that that's in here. So the voltage of the PAMP, so it's not just the color of it, but it's actually the voltage at which you are detecting this particular color and the intensity at which this color is at also plays a huge role in determining the compensation. There is, and I think I talked about this in the last class, who's worked with GFP? Who's worked with turbo GFP? All right. Turbo GFP or enhanced GFP. Have you ever pelleted the cells? What color is it? Yeah. No, no, no. If you work with turbo GFP or enhanced GFP, spin the cells down and look at the pellet, it's green in color because the GFP is so bright that everything looks like fluorescent green. When you try and use that on a flow cytometer, it's almost impossible to work with because it is so bright that it just basically bleaches out everything and it's impossible to compensate that. You can only really use it against certain colors, and even that, it bleeds into things that you don't even think need to be compensated against it. So the intensity of the GFP, or the intensity of the color, also plays a huge role in the compensation. And that's why you don't ever want to put too much dye into certain things. So.
Could you talk through using the unseen controls to pick the gates again?
Oh, what do you do?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's,
They all look like they're changing.
so if you have the unstained controls here, and you were going to look at whichever dye combination, what you typically have to do is you have to make sure that on the y-axis and also, on the x-axis and then on the y-axis is the particular combination of dyes that you're looking at. When you do that, you'll look to see where does this population of cells sit. Ultimately, what you want to do is you want to put in gates. So like in this particular example here, you would want to make sure that here, 99.9% of your cells falls in this lower left quadrant. You could maybe move this over, you could maybe move this a little bit down. But 99% of your cells falls in this quadrant here. And what this does is it allows you to kind of set the gates so that you know that anything here is positive, anything here is positive. With the single cell, the single color controls, so let's look at,
Really?
so this is the population of cells where we're looking at the this is site scatter, this is the 488-610, which is the single stain control that we're looking at here. What this is doing is this is actually measuring the CD10, but this is a single cell, a single stain control. So that here you would say that, okay, well, maybe this is off of site scatter here, but here is your negative population of cells here, and then everything over here is positive.
So you're looking for the rarer population.
It's not always the rarer population because it depends upon what your stain is. In the case of like CD45, most of the cells are going to be positive for CD45, so you kind of have to know what it is that you're staining for. That's why using an unstained control will give you an approximation, but with this, So in this case, you know, you're not too worried about what's positive or negative here, but you know, you could potentially say that, okay, you'd actually maybe want to use a different shaped gate, but you could kind of say, okay, this is where you would actually draw the gate. Right here, anything that's in that box, anything that's here, this is the positive. So this is where your cutoff is, this is negative. So you could use both the unstained, and the unstained you would only have a population of cells that existed down here. With the single cells, with the single stains, you then start to see what it is it's positive. Now this is looking at all mononuclear cells, stuff, but it gives you an idea of where to draw the actual gate. Which is, when you think about it in terms of the compensation, this is what you're doing with the compensation. You're having to determine what's the positive and what's the negative off of the mononuclear cell. Yeah?
Could you please show me again how to choose the count for short-term Jersey and long-term Jersey? Against the count, the parameter count. Because, could you please go to the short-term Jersey?
Why don't I get a heat map like you guys? Why does mine still
This?
look like this when I open it?
The count, what do you mean by the count?
And then because I see that in the y-axis in the assignment, there's a count there, but I'm not sure what that is. How to choose the count parameter.
Oh, the count just means it's a histogram.
Histogram.
Yeah. So whenever you're looking at just a single parameter, you don't have to then look at that against a different parameter. The count just means you're just going to show it as a histogram and then determine the positive and negative off of the histogram.
Okay.
And then what that will give you is that will give you a number of cells.
Okay.
It's like, I can do it right.
But mine doesn't even look like
Yeah.
that in his.
I still don't get how to compensate, because when I check it, it looks like this, which is bad, right?
No, that's fine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's just due to a number of cells. So,
So that's not curving?
no. If it goes off a 45-degree angle, it's bad. That's actually perfectly fine. So you get this.
I don't get that
Oh,
whatsoever.
I see. Okay, wait, let me see your compensating.
No, it broke already.
Wait, so,
It just
You may need to
freezes.
reinstall. I don't
so
know.
when I compensate like these,
Uh-huh.
is this too big, large of an area? Like, should I make it come in
No.
here and then come back out?
Uh-uh.
That's fine?
Yeah.
Okay.
What we're saying here is this is your pseudo plot, and you're seeing all the different cells. If you start looking at different things, like for example the dot plot, this is going to show you, only 8,000 cells. But if you were going to do it on, let's look at 2 million events on the dot plot. You have absolutely no idea where to draw the things, but it's still, all the data is still there.
What if this is like going off
That's
the
what it should
screen?
be.
How do I know what to, do I just select all the way over to the edge?
Yeah, so typically, you wouldn't want to go off the edge like that. So that's why here, I mean, this is a zebra plot or whatever. If you look at a contour plot,
This doesn't count.
this is where the majority of all your cells are. So then typically, no, I wouldn't go all the way to the edge
So
here.
why does mine have this like side?
That is like large
I can't
debris
reproduce what I did, but I think I
that's
did.
all off of this.
So I don't wanna,
You don't want that. Anything that goes off the scale like that, that's why you gate off of the forward scatter and side scatter like this, is it allows you to get rid of the debris that either exists down here, or in your case, there's large clumps of cells or whatever that's recognized there, and it's all off here. It's much larger in size and much more granular.
And why is the compensation that's like underneath, it's just like clear and doesn't have a word, like until I click on it.
Oh, is it just like the form, the color?
Yeah, it's like a clear color.
I don't know, you might need to just adjust it.
Oh,